Day 10. Fear of justice. The simulation hadn't ended. The prophet still stood on Mount Safa, sunlight gilding the edge of his cloak. But now, the image shifted, like time folding inward. The crowd dispersed, and Makkah darkened under the weight of whispers. Men stormed into private meetings. Doors slammed shut. Scrolls were drawn. Strategies whispered. The old world was cracking. From the shadows I could see them, Quraysh's elite. They weren't debating idols. They were debating how to stop him. The alien's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. You've seen it now. Do you still think Quraysh rejected Islam because of theology? I hesitated. The heat of the simulation still clung to me like sweat. But they were idolaters. Islam came to destroy their gods. Isn't that enough to explain it? He let out a dry, cutting laugh. How many idols stood around the Kaaba? 360, I replied quietly. Exactly. And Quraysh tolerated them all. His voice was flat, cold. They didn't go to war over Allat, Al-Uzza, or Manat. So why declare war on Muhammad, peace be upon him? I stayed silent. He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Why didn't they crush the false prophets, Al-Aswad, Al-Ansi, Musaylima, before they became threats? Why wait? His question hung like smoke in my lungs. Because those movements didn't challenge Quraysh's rule. They didn't call for justice. They didn't touch the structure of power. They were just spiritual noise. But Islam... He waved a hand, and the simulation fractured again. A new projection ignited before us. The Prophet ﷺ in Dar al-Arqam, surrounded by the poor, the enslaved, the youth of Quraysh. Bilal, Khabab, Sumaya. The forgotten, the broken. A storm in the making. Islam, the alien continued, was not just preaching about the afterlife. It was reordering the world. It didn't just say God is one. It said, you are not gods. It abolished the divine right of kings, the authority of tribal lords, the sanctity of inherited wealth. He didn't stop there. From the moment it was declared, Islam demanded a complete moral, social, and political transformation. I tried to push back. But isn't tawḥīd a religious belief? A creed? His eyes flared. Tawḥīd is not a private mantra. La ilaha illa Allah is a declaration of war on tyranny. It tears down false power. It declares no sovereign but Allah. No lawgiver but Him. No rule above His. He pointed at the screen. Quraysh's nobles, pacing like cornered animals. They understood this better than most Muslims do today. The weight of his words crushed the air around me. I swallowed hard. But can't religion stay in the mosque and politics and government? Isn't that safer, more peaceful? He leaned in, voice sharp and deliberate. Show me a single law that isn't rooted in a moral code. Show me a politics that doesn't carry values. He stepped closer. If your values come from Allah, why would you exile him from governance? Or is it man's greed you trust more than his justice? I said nothing. The screen pulsed again. A private Qurayshi council. Abu Jahl speaking. He speaks of equality, of justice. He threatens our sons, our fathers, our wealth. Abu Lahab gritting his teeth. We must silence him before he divides the clans. They weren't afraid of prayer. They were afraid of power redistribution. The alien's voice softened, but not with mercy. You think Quraysh's war on Islam is ancient history? He raised his hand. The screen shimmered. Suddenly, drones in the sky, corporate towers, warplanes bearing flags, news anchors in suits, modern empires. Their banner never fell. It was passed on. Today, it waves over empires that speak of freedom, while they cage your people. Footage scrolled past children in refugee camps, scholars imprisoned for sermons, villages burned for minerals, banks laundering the wealth of tyrants, puppet regimes quoting verses while selling their own. They praise moderate Islam, as long as it is obedient, silent, harmless, apolitical. A prayer rug in one hand, a permit form in the other. They still fear what Quraysh feared, a deen that governs, a system that cannot be bribed or tamed. The Prophet's voice echoed again from Mount Safa. I am a warner to you before a severe punishment. I whispered, barely audible. Then, what do we do? How do we fight this? The alien's voice was steady now. Fire tempered by steel. Not just with weapons. Not with empty slogans. Your power lies in returning to your deen. Not just in rituals, but in systems, in living it. Establish justice among yourselves. Protect the weak. Break the chains of debt and class and bloodline. Build a world where dignity is not a privilege, but a birthright. Only then will tyranny fall, just as the idols of Quraysh once crumbled. He pointed again. The screen zoomed in on the nobles of Quraysh. They stood in hushed panic, desperate to silence the Prophet ﷺ. Their faces were grim. There was no talk of religious tolerance, no mention of peaceful coexistence. They weren't arguing theology. They were preparing for war, not with God, but with justice. And that's when I understood. They hadn't tried to silence the Prophet ﷺ because he worshipped one God. They tried to silence him because he spoke for the voiceless, because he refused to bow, because he made the slave and the noble equal, because he offered the world a terrifying promise that one day the idols would fall, and with them, every tyrant who fed on them. Islam wasn't just a religion, it was a revolution. And I, seated in this alien chamber, finally understood why they had tried to bury it, and why, even now, others still try.